The snow was falling in slow, lazy spirals outside the tall glass windows of the luxury penthouse, the kind of place where the city's heartbeat felt both far away and close enough to touch. Inside, Eleanor Westwood, one of the richest women in the country, sat in silence. She was used to making headlines, mergers, buyouts, real estate deals worth billions, but lately, no number in her bank account could fill the emptiness that gnawed at her. She wasn't supposed to be here, not tonight. She had a meeting downtown, but her driver had taken a wrong turn through a quieter part of the city when she spotted it, a small, warmly lit neighborhood daycare still open at nearly 9 at night. Something about the glow through the window made her tell him to stop. She didn't know why. Maybe it was the faint sound of music drifting out. Maybe it was the shadow she saw moving inside. She stepped in, expecting to see staff cleaning up. Instead, she froze. There, in the middle of the dim room, sat a man on the floor, cradling a baby in one arm and holding a small bottle with the other. His head was bent low, eyes locked on the tiny face, whispering something too soft for her to catch. His clothes weren't expensive, just an old hoodie and jeans, but there was something about the way he looked at the child, as if she were the most valuable thing in the world. Eleanor didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until the man looked up. His eyes were tired, ringed with exhaustion, but warm. "Sorry," he said, clearly surprised to see her. "We're closed." She stepped forward instead of leaving. Is she yours?" His gaze softened. "No. Well, not exactly. She's hers." He nodded toward a small cot in the corner, where another baby slept soundly, wrapped in a thin blanket. "Twins. My daughters." Eleanor's heart skipped. She'd read stories about single fathers, about how rare it was for a man to stay when the world thought leaving was easier. But something about him, the way he adjusted the bottle just so, the way he shielded the baby from the cold draft, it hit her deep in the chest. She found herself asking questions before she could stop. He told her his name was Daniel, and that his wife had passed away shortly after childbirth. He'd tried working double shifts, but the daycare bills were crushing him. Tonight, he was only here after hours because his second job ran late, and he didn't want to take the babies home through the freezing night. Eleanor listened, and each word felt like a pinprick. She'd lived in a world where problems could be fixed with a phone call or a wire transfer. But here was a man whose battles couldn't be solved by money alone. He was giving everything he had, every hour, every ounce of strength, for two little souls who would never know how much he'd sacrificed. When Daniel laughed softly at something the baby did, when Eleanor saw the tiny hand grip his finger like it was the only anchor in the world, her vision blurred. She turned away quickly, but the tears were already there, hot and uninvited. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "It's just... I've spent my whole life chasing things I thought mattered. But this," she gestured at him, "the babies, the quiet warmth of the room. This is what matters." Daniel smiled faintly. "It's not easy," he said. "But they're worth everything." She stayed longer than she planned, helping him fold blankets and put away bottles. Before she left, she took one last look at the scene, the man who had nothing, yet gave more love than most people with everything. And she made a decision. The next morning, when Daniel walked into the daycare, there was a note taped to the door. "Daniel, this is not charity, it's an investment. I believe in you, and in them. Please accept this as a small step to give your daughters the life they deserve." Underneath was a check big enough to cover years of expenses, a new apartment lease in his name, and 2 tiny gold bracelets engraved with the baby's initials. Months later, Daniel would tell the story on a local news segment, holding his daughters close. And Eleanor, watching from her office, would smile through her tears, knowing she hadn't just changed their lives. They had changed hers. So if you're watching this now, remember, sometimes, the smallest moments can rewrite entire lives. If you believe in love, in kindness, and in the power of helping someone when they least expect it, give this story a like, share it, and subscribe. Because the world needs more reminders that we can all be someone's miracle. Her driver kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, maybe sensing her silence was heavier than usual. She wasn't looking at her phone, wasn't replying to the dozens of urgent messages from her board members. Instead, her mind kept drifting back to the image of Daniel on that floor, the hum of the heater, the faint creak of the rocking chair, the way his whole world seemed to fit inside his arms. She had built empires from glass and steel. She had bought skyscrapers, art collections, even islands. But nothing she owned had ever looked at her the way those babies looked at their father. When she got back to her penthouse, she stood at the massive window, staring down at the city lights. The whole skyline glittered like it was showing off, but to her, it all felt hollow. She remembered how Daniel's voice had cracked when he mentioned missing rent payments, how quickly he'd changed the subject to keep the mood light. For the first time in years, Eleanor couldn't sleep. The next day, she cleared her schedule without explanation. Her assistant nearly fainted when she said she'd be working outside the office. Eleanor didn't even know exactly what she planned to do, only that she needed to see Daniel again. When she arrived at the daycare in the late afternoon, she found him kneeling by the twins' playpen, building a little tower of foam blocks while the girls giggled and knocked it down over and over. He looked up, surprised, but not in the way most